And one of them had a dragon, and I said, which one of these is the coolest? You would pick the dragon one too. It's kind of like the Purge College Edition. And you might think that because I'm against murder, I'd be against the dragons burning people up, but absolutely not. I think the dragons are 100% within their rights to burn up whoever the heck they choose. In fact, I think they should maybe burn up more people. If I was a dragon, I would. Hi, and welcome to a brand new video. Today, we're going to be talking about Fourthwing. I'm going to be going through literally every single thing that happens in Fourthwing, but we're going to be doing it a little differently. If you've watched my Throne of Glass recap, that was done kind of all at once. Like I reread the Throne of Glass books, and then I would make slides and tell you about them. Okay, so you're going to read along with me. I'm going to read like 4 or 5 chapters, and then I'm going to report back as I read the chapters. That being said, let's jump in to the first 4 chapters, I believe, is all I've read so far. Day 1, we open with Conscription Day at Basigiath War College. Anyway, it's Conscription Day. Conscription Day is where all the girlies sign up for school. It's the first day of school for the first years. This is a college, so all of these guys and girls are in their 20s. I think you have to be 20 years old to start at the college. We open with this scene in which Violet, our main girly, is in her mother's office. Her mother is the HBIC of the War College. She is the principal. I think she's not a principal. I think she's like a general. But like the vibe is she's the principal. She's the boss lady of the War College, and her older sister is also in the office being like, excuse me, you can't send Violet to go hang out with the dragons because Violet is a frail girl and she's going to get killed. Apparently Violet has been training to be a scribe since she was like fairly young. And so everyone kind of anticipated that was indeed what she would be doing, was going to school to be a scribe. But unfortunately for her, her mother has decided that, like, embarrassing, everyone in their family is a dragon rider. And so Violet, too, will be a dragon rider. Like, that's just to continue in the family legacy of Driders. That's dragon riders, compound word. And her mother's like, yeah, I, like, truly can't have a scribe. That would be embarrassing for me. Embarrassing. And Mira, who is her sister, is like, I really think Violet's going to die if we let her go to Dragon Rider school. Like, can we send her to the book school where she belongs? And Mom is like, no. Then we get a little, like, family tree. All right, are you ready for the family tree? So we have Mom, HBIC of the War College, Dragon Rider extraordinaire, war hero par excellence. Then we have their dad. And their dad died about a year ago, and he was a scribe. So, like, clearly the family legacy could also include scribes, because Violet's dad was a scribe, but he's dead. Rest in peace. And then there are 3 children. So we have Violet, her older sister, Mira, and then their older brother, Brennan. Brennan died 5 years ago fighting in a Tyreshi rebellion. And we will talk lots about this rebellion because this rebellion is an important part of the history of this world. But Brennan is dead. Rest in peace. And Violet kind of like makes it seem like one of the reasons their dad died was because he was like so heartbroken over Brennan's loss and he like never fully recovered. And also maybe made her mom more of like a mean lady because her mom is not friendly, not kind, she's not nice. So let's talk a little bit more about the structure of the War College. So like I said, there are dragon riders, obviously. They're scribes. There are also healers and there are also infantry. So there are 4 different sections of the War College. Dragon riders are like the cool kids though, because they get to fly on dragons. I mean, I probably didn't need to tell you that. Like if you looked at a group of people and like one of them was a scribe, one of them was a doctor, one of them was just like, I don't know what infantry is, so a ground soldier. And one of them had a dragon and I said, which one of these is the coolest? You would pick the dragon one too. Obviously. So yeah, the dragon riders are the coolest. And now Violet's going to have to be one. But as we come to find out, Violet is a frail girl. Sort of. The War College in general is a 3-year program. I think that's true for everyone. I think no matter which route you take, it's 3 years at this War College. And we learn that like it's a war college because the military is hugely important because they are at war pretty consistently and have been for the last 400 years with the kingdom of Why do I do this to myself? I like truly can't pronounce anything. If this is your first video here, welcome. I can't pronounce a single thing. Pormiel and their Griffin riders. And we'll talk about what a Griffin is later. Mostly because I don't remember what a Griffin is. So in this moment, I can't talk to you about what a Griffin is because I don't know. We haven't gotten to that point in the book. And I can't really remember. I think they're like eagle lions. They're not as cool as dragons. That's all you need to know. General Sorengale has decided that her daughter is going to be a dragon rider. And so conscription day for the dragon riders means that they have to walk the parapet. The parapet is this like architectural balance beam that is like really pretty. I will pop a picture up of what a parapet is. But essentially they have to like walk across this little like stretch of land from one tower to the other, or not land, of building, from one tower to the other, and not slip and fall and die. And like 15% of them will slip and fall and die. Why do they do this? I don't know. It seems like we could like maybe even have them do that, but like there's a net and it'll catch you, and then like you don't die and you can like go be an infantryman. Like this just doesn't seem like an effective use of human life, to be honest. We will come across this again and again. They really do want to kind of instill in you that Basigiath, the War College, Basigiath, the War College, does not have really any they don't place any importance on human life. They're totally fine with murdering all these 20-year-olds. Anyway, Mira is fighting with her mother. That's where we open. Is Mira fighting with her mother about whether Violet should go to the Dragon Rider corner of the War College. And Violet's mom is like, actually, Mira, Violet is tougher than you because she's constantly in pain. And she says, Mira, Violet deals with more pain before lunch than you do in an entire week. If any of my children is capable of surviving the Rider's Quadrant, it's her. So like, I do really appreciate that Violet's mom, although forcing her to do something she does not want, is like, because I have mad respect for her and I believe in her. I am forcing her to go to this place where really good chances that she will die, but it's because I believe in her so hard. And Violet thinks so too. Violet's like, oh my gosh, was my mom actually nice to me? So weird. My mom is never nice to me or to anyone. And then she's like, okay, bye. See you later. Also, remember that I like literally cannot show you any favoritism. I know you are my daughter. I am your mother. But like, once you're in that war college, I don't know you. You don't know me. Okay. And Violet's like, okay, see ya. Anyway, as they leave Violet's mother's office, Mira is just like chatting with Violet, trying to like get her prepared. She's like, I'm worried this might happen. And she like passes Violet like a cute little outfit. And by cute little, I mean, she gives her like a leather dragon rider ensemble, and also gets her new shoes. She gets her a dragon rider boots instead of the shoes that Violet is wearing, which are like quite slippery. Mira is getting Violet ready. She also goes through her backpack because Violet is going to have to carry her backpack with all of the possessions that she is bringing into the Rider Quadrant with her across the parapet. And so it's important that it is as light as possible because you like don't want to be bringing extra stuff. But Violet, remember, she's a scribe at heart. She loves a book. She loves reading. She's packed books with her. And as someone who, anytime we go on a vacation, I would like to bring the same number of books as days we're on vacation. Even as someone who does probably 70% of her reading on her Kindle, I still am like, I also need to bring 4 hardcover books with me. Even though I have 30 books pre-stocked into my Kindle, I understand this. Because how am I to know what I want to read on day 2 of my vacation? If I had a whole year at War College and I had to bring all my books with me, you bet your butt it would just be like literally full of books. It would have like one outfit, 27 books in it. Can't even risk becoming bored at War College. Anyway, one of the books is this book from that Violet is like really reluctant to leave behind. It is this like collection of folklore that she got from her dad about these creatures called Venin. And Violet really wants to bring this with her, but Mira is like, literally no. The only books that Mira allows Violet to keep is a few books on like how to kill people, because she said, oh, that might actually be useful. Then we start talking about the Codex, which is this like rule book that Violet really familiarized herself with because, again, Violet is a scholar at heart. She's a little bit of a Hermione Granger, the only one who read the history of Hogwarts, you know? And it is called the Codex. We will reference the Codex kind of a lot. The Codex is this like rule book. And essentially what the like main rule that we care about in this moment is that murder, totally cool at War College. Not totally cool. You can't like murder people like in class. Essentially, if you're like in formal structured time, unless you're sparring, allowed to murder. On your free time, allowed to murder. But if you're like in the presence of authority figures, not allowed to murder. And I just like, again, love that this college is just like all about survival of the fittest, right? They have like the idea being like, if you're too weak, people will take you out. And so we'll have the strongest army because we got rid of the weakest links. Okay, I can kind of see that. But also, like, there's just like no way that you're going to be able to effectively learn and study in an environment where you could get murdered in it at any minute. Like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think not getting murdered is like the most important one. You know, you need like food, water, shelter, not getting murdered before you can like learn stuff. I'm sorry, there's just like no way that you're gonna be able to integrate like knowledge into your brain when you are trying not to get murdered actively at every moment. Like, I just think we could create a better learning environment, create better soldiers, riders at the end of this process if we didn't allow them to kill each other. I know it's a crazy idea, but like, I think they maybe should try it for a couple years. Mira is like, okay, you need to go find Dane Astos. I don't know how to say his last name, but his first name is Dane, and I hate Dane. Normally, I wouldn't say I hate a character before he even arrives on page, but like, this man is the most obnoxious character that I've probably ever read in my entire life. I just like truly cannot stand him. We'll meet him in a minute. We can talk about why I can't stand him, but he like drives me up a wall from like the moment we meet him. But Dane and Violet were like childhood best friends. He's a year older than her, so he's been at the Dragon Academy for a full year already. And so he knows the lay of the land and also has a little bit of authority within the academy. We'll find out, a squad leader. And so he will be like a helpful ally for Violet, supposedly. Mostly he's just annoying. And the final thing Mira says to her is like, hey, girly, you got to stay away from Xaden Ryerson. Which immediately, because I've read a book before, I knew that this obviously was going to be the love interest. Spoiler, if you were just watching this video I don't know, why would you watch this video if you hadn't already read this book? If you planned on it. I guess maybe you'd watch this video instead of reading the book. I'm actually going to read you a little section from this about Mira explaining why she cannot interact with Xaden Ryerson under any circumstances. That Xaden Ryerson, she confirms, if you're lancing her gaze, he's a third year and he will kill you the second he finds out who you are. His father was the great betrayer. He led the rebellion. I say quietly, what is Xaden doing here? All the children of the leaders were conscripted as punishment for their parents' crimes. So we get a little bit here. We'll learn more about this later, but we had this Threshing rebellion that took place like 5-ish years ago, and all of the children, apparently, as we're told in this little statement, were then sent to Basigiath War College as like punishment for their parents' crimes, which like, I'm not super familiar with international like war law in the current world that we live in, but like, that seems highly unethical to me. Like, if I were writing war laws about like what we were allowed to do, conscripting children to the opposing army seems unethical. But what do I know? Again, I've never been to War College. Time for parapet time, finally. We're 20 minutes in. We literally haven't even walked the parapet yet. She gets in line for the parapet. She kind of immediately like makes friends with the people around her, even though Mira was like, don't make friends, make allies. She's like, okay, but I have to live here, so I'm gonna make friends. Which, like, yeah, girlie, make friends. Friends are what make life worth living. So make some friends. She makes friends with the people around her. There's this girl named Rhiannon Matthias and this boy named Dylan. I didn't write down his last name. Okay. She makes friends with both of them. They're chatting away. We kind of learn a little bit more about them. We learn that Dylan is so excited to go to War College. He has like a sweetheart back home, and they're going to get engaged as soon as he's done, but they've decided to like wait the 3 years for him to like complete a Dragon Rider school before they get engaged. And then Rhiannon is excited also. She's like wanted to be a writer her whole life. Her parents don't love that she's going to become a writer, which is like obviously like the opposite of Violet's whole deal, because Violet's mom forced her to become a writer. And she is like, but don't even worry, I have a twin sister at home and she's already married with a baby. Whoa, teen bride over here. So she's like, it doesn't matter if I die at the War College. She doesn't say that part, but like it's implied. Right before they're supposed to go on, it's like very windy, stormy, not a great day to walk the parapet, but like you got to do what you got to do. Violet looks over and realizes that Rhiannon is wearing the slippery boots. Remember, her sister gave her sticky boots that will help her walk the parapet and not slip and fall, but Rhiannon's got these like slippery boots on. And Violet turns to Rhiannon and is like, hey girlie, what size shoe do you wear? And Rhiannon wears like a one size bigger than Violet. And so Violet's like, here's what we're going to do. You're going to wear one of my boots and one of your boots, and I'm going to wear one of my boots and one of your boots. And then we'll have a better chance of both making it across. that is so nice. I'm sure like we're supposed to be like, oh my gosh, Violet is the nicest. There's no way in hell that I would do that for a girl I just met. Sorry. Does that make me evil? Maybe. And I know this is like a life or death situation, but like I wouldn't have even thought to do that. Like I wouldn't even have thought to do that. I would have been like, be so careful. It looks like your boots are really slippery. My sister gave me non-slippery boots, but yours look really slippery, which is a bummer for you. Because if this girl falls, this girl that she's known 5 minutes, now she's going to, for the rest of the year, have two different size boots. That seems bad. Like good on Violet. She's the nicest girl in all the town. Not me. Could never be me. There's a bunch of students, older students, guarding kind of like the entrance to the parapet. They're like the lifeguards at the top of the water slide, being like, okay, you can go. Wait. Okay, you can go. And she like comments that the third guy, she like see there's 3 guys up there. The first and second guy, nothing worth writing home about. The third guy, hottest man she's ever seen. Again, immediately I know that's Xaden, because again, I've read a book. I'm going to read you the description of Xaden because I feel like you deserve it. He's tall, with windblown black hair and dark brows. The line of his jaw is strong and covered by warm, tawny skin and dark stubble. And when he folds his arms across his torso, the muscles in his chest and arms ripple, moving in a way that makes me swallow. And his eyes the shade of gold-flexed onyx. The contrast is startling, jaw-dropping even. Everything about him is. His features are so harsh that they look carved, and yet they're astonishingly perfect, like an artist worked a lifetime sculpting him. And at least a year of that was spent on his mouth. He's the most exquisite man I've ever seen, and living in the War College means that I've seen a lot of men. Even the diagonal scar that bisects his left eyebrow and marks the top corner of his cheek only makes him hotter. Flaming hot. Scorching hot. Gets you in trouble in you like it level of hot. Suddenly, I can't remember why Mira told me not to mess around outside of my year group. Because Mira was like, you can sleep with whoever you want as long as they're also first years. Like, do not sleep with second and third years. It's just a bad idea. Which that is good advice, Mira. Because like the power differentials are going to be a little funky monkey. She's probably going to break that rule. Spoiler. It is Xaden. Again, I told you, the hottest man alive is obviously the man she needs to stay away from, who is supposedly wanting to murder her. They like banter, sort of. It's like aggressive bantering, like, are you going to murder me level of bantering. His family was connected to this Tereshi rebellion, and his father killed her brother. So her brother, Brennan, was killed by Xaden's father, but then Violet's mother was the one responsible for executing Xaden's father. So like they both have family members that have murdered each other. Let's live and let live, keep it moving. And Violet asks him, are you going to kill me? And before he can answer, Dylan, who had already started out on the parapet, falls and dies. So hopefully you didn't get attached to Dylan, because he is gone already. Rest in peace to Dylan. Then Xaden does respond. As this man plummets to the ground, Xaden says, why would I waste my energy killing you when the parapet will do it for me? A wicked smile curves his lips. Your turn. All right, we're in chapter 2. Okay, so Violet is about to cross the parapet, and this boy named Jack Barlow comes up to her and like shoves her a little bit. She has like no choice but to like either walk across the parapet or like fall to the ground. And so she has to start. She wasn't like quite ready. She hadn't like steeled herself, but she's going now. And luckily for us and for her, info dumping is what keeps her calm. Okay. So she just starts like reciting facts about the world they live in. And this is like her soothing mechanism for herself. I feel like this is actually like a fairly common soothing mechanism in books. And I've never met anyone who's like, you know what really calms me down? Reciting facts that I know. If you recite facts that you know in order to keep yourself calm in situations, like random facts, not like facts about like what you're doing, because like obviously if you're on an airplane, it's like helpful to remind yourself that like turbulence like never brings a plane down. I don't know if that's true. Don't take that as fact. Or like flying in a plane is like so much safer than like driving a car, and like knowing those specific statistics. I'm talking about literal random facts. Like you're in a stressful situation and you start to like name the states and the years that they were founded. Level of facts. Anyway, so she starts to tell us like about the country they live and just like generally what's happening. So we're going to cut to the map. So they live on this continent that is separated into these 2 kingdoms. So we have Navarre, which sounds like the planet from Avatar. So close. I watched Avatar actually one time in my AP biology class in high school. And that's the only time I saw Avatar. Sorry, everyone. So there's that kingdom, and then there's also, like I said, Pormel. And they've been at war for the past 400 years. So Navarre is the larger of the two countries, and it's divided into 6 provinces. And we learned that Tyrandor, which is the province where Xaden is from, it's like the largest and most southern part of Navarre. I'm going to consider it like the Texas of Navarre, and it does cause issues. And then we have Poromiel, and then beyond the Poromiel, the like plains and highlands of that country is just like desert wastelands. And we learned that they like both kingdoms, Navarre and Poromiel, kind of like have very different goods, and so 4 times a year they do meet up to exchange these goods. Okay, there's like these alliance-based agreements where they're gonna like switch things in order to like make sure everyone can thrive, even though they hate each other. As Violet is like reciting these facts to herself, Jack is following her. He's like right behind her on the parapet, and well, not right behind her, but like he's following her behind on the parapet. So she like needs to keep moving because he's being like really aggressive. He's like taunting her as they walk across, and then she like hears something and she looks back and sees that Jack like grabbed another kid that was trying to cross the parapet and like chucked him off. Like this man is like just like truly murderous. I imagine it's that kid from Toy Story grown up. Whenever we have encounter a character who's just like evil for no reason, I do imagine the kid from Toy Story grown up. I just like feel like that's probably the energy we're coming from. So she like rushes across. She's like really worried that Jack's gonna murder her, but she makes it just in time. And as she crosses the other side, she like breathes a sigh of relief because she knows, based on the codex, that Jack is not allowed to murder her if they're in the presence of like superior cadets, like second years essentially. She's like, phew. And she says that she's like, you're not allowed to murder me anymore because now we're like in the presence of superior cadets, and like you're not officially a cadet until you like make it across the parapet. So like she wasn't safe until she like literally put her feet on the ground. But Jack hasn't put his feet on the ground, and the people are like, you could murder him if you wanted. And she like has a knife and she's like thinking about it, but then she decides she's not going to murder him, mostly because she can't. I mean, also because, like, I don't think she wants to murder, but she's like, I'm not strong enough to, like, murder him from this angle. She's, like, below him, and so she knows she doesn't have enough leverage to kill him, and so she would just injure him, and that just seems like it would make him more angry. And so she's like, no, he can get down. And then as Jack is, like, leaving, he's like, I'm gonna kill you later. Okay. Why? Could you calm down, sir? You're being kind of crazy for no reason. I also think we have Jack who's like homicidal for some reason, but like they make it seem like these kids want to murder each other. Not like super regularly, but like, and it just like, it's kind of like the Purge College Edition, which sounds a little scary, but also my thing with the Purge is I actually feel, and maybe I'm wrong, okay, that's quite possible, that like most people don't murder not because it's illegal, but because like it's wrong to murder. Like they're more guided by the morality around murdering than the laws around murdering, you know? And so I just feel like even if murdering is allowed, maybe it's not going to be as big of a problem as they kind of make it seem. Violet kind of walks away, and as she walks away and like comes back to her body, she realizes that she's injured her knee pretty badly. She slipped at one point when she was walking across the parapet and she banged her knee. She like fell down, banged her knee. And if it had been like pretty much anyone else, this injury wouldn't have caused like substantial damage. It would have just been like a banged knee. They would have had a bruise on their knee and then they would have been fine. But for Violet, it is like a much more substantial injury because Violet has super like loose ligaments in her body. The author has talked about before how she has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and Violet has the same thing. Essentially, it's never called that because, you know, this is a fantasy novel, but essentially she has like ligaments and things and joints that like pop out of place quite easily. And so slamming to the ground made her like kneecap really loose, and like, I don't know if it fully dislocated it, but like it could dislocate at any second. So she needs to go bind it up. She's also got a lot of adrenaline pumping through her system, and she's feeling like quite woozy, like she might pass out at any second, like with the pain in her knee and the like adrenaline of walking across the parapet. Luckily, Dane finds her, my nemesis. And again, we're told that this is Violet's like childhood best friend. They grew up together. They I think both their parents work at the War College, and so they like grew up playing together and hanging out and being best friends. And he escorts her back to his rooms, and that's not technically allowed, but like, again, the rules are shaky. And she goes, she wraps up her knee. He's like, you need to make sure no one sees this. They'll like see it as weakness and they'll kill you. And he's like freaking out because obviously he didn't know that Violet was going to come in here. This was like sort of a last minute decision, and they had kind of anticipated her whole life that she would end up in the scribe quadrant. And obviously she's not in the scribe quadrant. She's here in the writer quadrant. And so he's like very not excited about this. And he's like, girly, we got to get you out of here. He's like, you could literally die at any second. I'm worried for you right now. Like, someone could kill you in this very moment. We got to get you out. And he's like trying to come up with plans and schemes on how to get her out of here, how to like sneak her out. And she's like, I like can do it. I'm fine. And he is just like the most patronizing man on the planet. The most patronizing man on the planet. Like, I don't even think I can fully convey to you how much this man is just like, no, you're way too frail and fragile to survive even one single second here. Like, honestly, it's a miracle you've lasted this long. You might die. You might just like keel over and die in front of me. I'm still worried about it. He's just like, I don't know. It's like couched as him like being caring for her, but like he doesn't provide her any like support or resources to like be successful. He doesn't listen to her at all when she's like, no, I think like I can do it. Like, I'm here now. I think I'm going to try my best to do it. He's just like, we have to get you out of here. I don't know. And normally I like love an overprotective sort of man, but this man, no, not for one single second did I appreciate this man. And we learn a little bit more about like the magic system. We'll learn more as the book goes on. Magic is connected to dragons in this world. And so I don't know if it's solely connected to dragons or if it's just mainly connected to dragons, but Dane has, because he's a Titanir, has bonded to a dragon. And so that allows him a couple of things. He has like some general magic powers that like kind of everyone gets when they bond to a dragon, where he can like move small things. Like, he locks the door without touching it. And like there's a few other things that he can do, just like generally with his powers. But he also has this signet magic, and signet magic is like special for each and every person, and it's normally connected to something that will help with battling. And Violet doesn't know what Dane's signet is, and she's curious. We'll learn about it in a couple chapters. And she wraps up her knee, and then they head back down to the main room. All the first years have crossed the parapet now, except the ones who have fallen. We had like 20 or so that fell. 30. We have a lot that have fallen this year on the parapet. And so like I think it's like closer to 20% of the people fell on the parapet. They are like, here are all the people that fell, and then they organize everyone that's left into their groups. And the groups are organized into sections, squads, and wings. Okay, so I'm gonna explain this sort of. It's like kind of confusing and also kind of doesn't matter, but I'm gonna explain it anyway using Violet's words. She says this to Rhiannon, who looks a little confused. They're like, you figured someone would Google this beforehand. I assume they don't have Google, but like maybe they give you a brochure. Come on. Anyway, there are 3 squads in each section and 3 sections in each of the 4 wings. So squads are like the little groups that they are a part of, that they like do all their activities with. And then their sections are like the large groups, bigger than that. And then there are 4 wings that are bigger than that. Okay, great. So initially, Violet and Rhiannon are both in second squad, flame section, in the second wing, because Dane had like arranged it so both of them could be in his squad because he's a squad leader. But then pretty quickly, their squad is moved from second wing to fourth wing, and that's bad news because Xaden is the leader of the fourth wing. And obviously, we knew they were going to stay in second wing because this book isn't called second wing. It's called fourth wing. Now they're in Xaden's wing, and that's very scary for Violet because now Xaden is like the boss of her. And again, everyone keeps telling her that this man does want to murder her. And then as soon as that's done, the dragons come to visit them. And this is like the first time that most people have seen dragons up close. Like even Violet, even though like her whole family has dragons, it's like weird to me that she wouldn't interact with the dragons at all. But like, I guess they just like truly are around for like war times and for like official purposes, and then like the dragons go home. We learn a little bit more about like dragons, and dragons in this world can really only like tolerate humans, because in order for the dragons to have access to magic, they also need to be bonded to a human, just like the humans need to be bonded to a dragon to access magic. And they need magic in order to protect the Vale, which is like the dragon land, and it's where they like have the baby dragons and like it's where they do dragon politics and all that sort of stuff. The dragons have like a pretty complex social and political, I don't know if political is the right word, but yeah, we're gonna call it political, social structure. They are like, we'll come to find out, dragons like essentially can like talk to each other like fully, and are like fully rational beings, pretty much like humans, except they're giant and can brain flame and fly around. We also learn that once a rider is bonded to a dragon, if the dragon dies, the rider will die, but not vice versa. If a rider dies, the dragon doesn't necessarily die. This is day 2 at the Dragon Academy. We learn a little bit more about where they're living. Right now, the first years live in dorms. They will get to have private rooms once they go through the threshing. So let me give you kind of a semester at a glance. So they will spend like the first 2 months in training for dragon school, where they're going to do kind of like a mix of things. They'll have like some academic classes that are pretty directly related to like war and like history of war. And then they will also have like physical things that they're training in. So 2 of the things we learn about are like sparring. They will have like sparring class. Twice a week they will have to go like spar, or they like go and fist fight other people in the ring. And then they also will have to go like practice the Gauntlet. It is this like vertical obstacle course that they have to complete at the end of these 2 months. We'll see the Gauntlet later. After the Gauntlet, they do this thing called the presentation, which is essentially like a reverse parade in which they walk through a bunch of dragons, and so the dragons can like look at them. All the available dragons come and like look at the people, get like a sense of them. Sometimes the dragons eat you or burn you up. And then after that is the threshing. And the threshing is this like place where they get their dragons. It's like a really big deal. It like determines whether you will continue in the academy or not. Like even if you make it through all of the like first year stuff, if you do not bond with a dragon, then like you can't be a dragon rider, obviously. And so at that point, then you would have the choice to either leave or you could like try again. Like, forgot to mention this when we were talking about the dragons that arrived yesterday on their like first day. The dragons did burn some people up. The dragons are allowed to roast people whenever they feel like it. And you might think that because I'm against murder, I'd be against the dragons burning people up, but absolutely not. I think the dragons are 100% within their rights to burn up whoever the heck they choose. In fact, I think they should maybe burn up more people. If I was a dragon, I would. So anyway, they have this like meeting at the beginning of the first day of class before they go to their various classes. But before Violet heads off, Dane is like, actually, can I talk to you for a quick second? He again is like worried that she's going to die any second. And so he's like, hey girlie, we could still get you out of here. Don't even worry. We could still get you free if you want to be free. And she's like, no, I'm literally fine. And he's like, I really think you are going to die at any moment. And then they're like kind of like chatting in private. It's just the 2 of them. And Violet asks about Dane's signet. She's like curious what his like super secret magic is. And he's like, it's confidential, but I'll tell you. And he like points to this patch that like shows that it's confidential. And he explains that his signet is that he can like read minds, sort of. He's like, it's not anything dangerous. It's not like one of those talents they'll like kill you for, but he can, if he touches you, like puts his hands on, I think he says your temples, like on your face, he can see what you just saw. Like he sees your like short-term memories. He doesn't see like everything in your brain, but just like what you just witnessed. And we also learned that his dragon's name is Kathy the dragon, which is fun. Violet looks behind Dane. They're like in this huge room. Like, I don't know why this is the room they selected to like talk in private, but whatever. They're in this huge room, and Violet looks up behind Dane and sees Xaden, and Xaden is standing at the top of the stairs, and she's like, Dane, look, it's Xaden. And then Dane tells her to literally run, and then she runs away. Like, what? Chapter 5. It is time for like the first day of like real classes over at Dragon Academy. Is everyone ready? Is everyone prepared for classes at Dragon Academy? I don't know. But the big class they have, the class that they have every single day, the only one that's like an everyday academic class, is this class called Battle Brief. And Battle Brief is like essentially like current events military edition, where they talk about like any major military updates that they have from like across the nation. It is co-taught by one of the writers, Professor DeVera, and one of the scribes, Professor Markham, because it kind of like combines both of those things. Like obviously the dragon riders are the ones actually out there fighting, but the scribes are responsible for maintaining records of what's going on, and so they're also responsible for like deciding what aspects of current events are the most important things that need to be recorded, you know? So essentially, the format of this class is that they get like an update on current events that are happening, and then the students ask questions about those events. But like TBH, there's like a lot of stuff they can't know. Like they're like 20-year-old randos. They don't have like the clearance to know everything that is happening in these events. So a lot of times they're like, hey, I have a very like a question that will really help me understand that. And they're like, you literally can't ask that. You can't know that. And they're like, okay, I'm so glad you're making us ask questions when you're not going to provide us with answers. The event that they're talking about today is this attack that happened on an eastern village. So there was a big griffin attack, but it happened as the wards failed. And we learned that the wards are this thing that like kind of surrounds Navarre. And it is this type of like border magic essentially that is created by the dragons, which is why their country is like vaguely in the shape of a circle around the Vale, the dragon lands, because the dragons are able to like create this magic that like essentially prevents people from crossing the borders. But the wards fell, and the wards have seemingly been falling more and more regularly lately. Something's up, something's afoot. This event is kind of weird because it takes place in these eastern mountains, and griffins are not so great at flying at altitude. Like dragons are much better at flying at altitude. And so it's weird that the griffins would have attacked at that spot unless they knew the wards were going to fail. So like suspicious, they must have been up to something. And then through this like Q&A portion of the day, we learn that it seems like they were looking for something. Xaden asked a very important question about that. And obviously our girly Violet asks like really good questions in this because she's so smart. She's so smart and brilliant. And she initially tries to like pass these questions to Rhiannon to like blend in, but everyone knows, like everyone can see what's happening. And they're like, ask your own questions, weirdo. And then after that, her next class is Sparring. And Sparring she has to do like twice a week, and that's where they go and like fight other students. You know the class where you go and fight other students? Yeah, that's this one. It's her first sparring session. Violet's nervous because she, although brilliant, is like not a good fighter in terms of the fact that like her body is not very resilient when it comes to like taking hits. We also learn a few more of the people in her like squad. So we have Riddock, who is like a jokester, man. He's always cracking jokes, being silly. And then we have Aurelie. And she's like really tough and muscle and reminds Violet a lot of her sister, Mira. And then we, of course, have Jack, who's not in her squad, but in another squad that is also in the sparring rings at the same time. And if you don't remember, Jack Barlow, which is like very similar to Jack Harlow, I just realized. Jack Barlow is a psychopath. He like really loves murdering. I'm so glad we let him into Dragon Rider Academy. Like maybe we should have had a psych eval at the door rather than a balance beam walk. Just a suggestion. I do have some ideas on how we can make this school like more functional, and it does include not letting in total psychopaths like this boy. Anyway, so he's in another room somewhere, or in another ring in this sparring room somewhere on the other side of the room. Violet is kind of like trying not to pay attention to him, but then he does end up murdering another kid. Like he breaks another kid's neck and kills him. Like someone put this kid away. I understand that like technically we're allowed to murder, but like I just like don't think, one, that's a safe learning environment. Like no one's absorbing anything into their little noggins. And two, I just don't understand how you could like really build like a cohesive, strong team if everyone on the team was constantly worried that the other people were going to kill them. This just like doesn't seem like really effective pedagogy. Violet winds up getting challenged to a sparring match with Imogen. And Imogen is a second-year student who is one of the Tyreshi rebellion kids. Because if you recall, we talked about this a little bit before. All of the children of the rebels from the Tyreshi rebellion that took place about 5 years ago, all of them have been forced to become dragon riders. It is like not optional. They like have to join this elite group in the military. Okay, weird plan, but whatever. And she challenges Violet, and she's immediately like, I'm going to kill you because your mother killed my whole family. So I'm going to kill you. And Violet's like, okay, I would rather you didn't, but like, okay. Imogen doesn't wind up killing Violet, but she does wind up like breaking some bones in Violet's shoulder because Violet is a fragile, frail girly. So it's not that hard to break bones in her shoulder. Anyway, Violet is forced to like yield. She's forced to like lose her first battle, which is like a terrible thing to happen. Except at least you know that if everyone's sparring, at least 50% are going to end up yielding or dead. But like, it can't be that big of a deal to yield on your first battle because, again, like a good chunk of the population is going to. I mean, it probably looks better if you win, but like, I don't think it's the end of the world, Violet. I think you should calm down. Anyway, she winds up only living because I think Imogen tries to like stab her or use her magic or something. I don't recall. But the armor that Mira gave Violet is enough to keep her safe and sound and cozy. And she makes it to another day. Dane, who is her squad leader, takes her to the healers afterwards to like get her shoulder looked at, and they bring in a mender, and we learned that menders are this like particular type of healer that have the signet. No, we learned that menders are dragon riders that have like a particular signet that allows them to mend literally anything. So not only can they like fix Violet's broken bone, but like if you ripped up a book, they could put it back together again. Like they're able to restore anything that has been like broken to its original form. Dane, because he's the worst man alive, brings Violet to the healers, but while he's bringing Violet to the healers and to the menders, he is so dramatic about it. He brings so much attention to her, and he's trying to be like, no one can know that you're injured, but also he's being like drama queen USA, population Dane, and you know, bringing a lot of unwanted attention. He's being so dramatic. He doesn't want the menders to mend her shoulder because he's like, if your shoulder is broken, maybe we can get you in the scribe quadrant like you're supposed to be. And she's like, Dane, please don't suggest I like sit through broken bones so I can do what you want me to do. Because like as I've told you on numerous occasions, I'm cool being in the dragon riders quadrant. Like I think I can make it work. You're the one who's like, no, absolutely not. You're going to die any second now. We also learned that her brother Brennan had the mending signet. That was like his dragon power. So that's sweet. And eventually she gets her shoulder fixed up. She's not going to wear a sling, even though she should, because like they're able to fix the bone, but like things are still like quite sore, uncomfortable inside her shoulder. But she can't have a sling, sign of weakness again, and we are really trying to avoid getting murdered. So she heads back to the dorms with her arm mended, and Rhiannon is like, oh, someone left you a present, and on her bed is a note from Mira, her sister, with a little wrapped gift. The note says, Violet, I stayed long enough to read the rolls this morning, and you aren't on them. Thank gods. I can't stay. I'm needed back with my wing, and even if I could stay, they wouldn't let me see you anyway. I bribed a scribe to sneak this into your bunk. I hope you know how proud I am to be your sister. Brennan wrote this for me the summer before I entered the quadrant. It saved me, and it can save you too. I added my own bits of hard-earned wisdom here and there, but mostly it's his, and I know he'd want you to have it. He'd want you to live. Love, Mira. She opens it and immediately recognizes like Brennan's handwriting, and she gets really emotional because like obviously she misses her dead brother. Reasonable. Apparently it's like a Navarre tradition to burn all of the stuff from the person who has passed away to like kind of like release them into the next life, I think. And so it is kind of like rare to have these like possessions, these things from past family members, because you should burn them. So Violet finds it like incredibly comforting and like nice to have this like little token of Brennan, and Rhiannon like sees that and is like, oh, sweet. And then she starts going through this book, and it's essentially like a guide to school with all of Brennan's like hard-earned wisdom, and Mira has added some notes here and there as well of just like tips and tricks of how to get through dragon school without like dying. And as she's flipping through it, Violet is like, oh my gosh, I know how I am going to stay alive. Okay, this next chapter opens with a couple quotes from the Code of Conduct. All the chapters open with quotes from like official documentation from somewhere in the Fourthwing world. I haven't mentioned it before because I didn't feel like it was that important, but this one is like a good one, and it is essentially talking about how the Tereshi rebellion children should be treated, and it's that they're not allowed to be like grouped together more than like 3 of them in a single group. So no more than 3 people with like rebel relics. So they have like these tattoos that mark them as rebels too. And no more than 3 of them per like squad. And they're also not allowed to gather in more than groups of 3 because they're worried about them like bonding together and like mutinying which like maybe you shouldn't have made them come to this school. Like I don't really understand why like these kids that were like rebels whose parents like essentially committed treason, we're told, they were like, the only solution for that is to make them join our military. That actually does seem like something America would do. But like the highest ranks of the military, we'll probably learn more about it later. I don't know. There's probably some reason that I was not told yet. Was I told last time I read this book? Maybe, but this isn't last time. This is this time. And at this point, I don't remember. Violet is out tonight. It is past curfew and she's sneaking around after dark because she needs to go pick herself up some poison berries because that's the plan. That's the scheme. She has decided that for her next sparring match, which will be coming up in a few days, she needs to poison her partner because there's no way she's going to be able to like fight these people with just like her physical strength. She's just like not physically as strong as the majority of other students here, but her mental strength, she's smarter than all of them. Again, she's the Hermione Granger in this situation. And so she's out in this tree. She's like climbed up a tree and she's like gathering berries from this vine that grows into the tree, when all of a sudden she sees some shadows below her and she knows she needs to be very still because she can't be caught out here. It's post curfew. And also she's curious. She says, what are these guys up to? She realizes pretty quickly it's Xaden and Imogen. And she's like, oh my gosh, so curious. But then the group starts growing and it grows to like 24 and she realizes that all of them are rebel children. They're young adults now. They're all in their 20s, but like the children of rebels is what I'm meaning here. And she's like, okay, clearly I need to know what's happening. What are they talking about? Are they planning something? Are they up to something? I like need to gather intel. So she like sneaks closer, but she also needs to be really careful because if Xaden like literally looks up, he's going to see her, which is not good news. And so she's eavesdropping on this conversation. And like I mentioned, she's like kind of expecting them to be like plotting some scheme, some mutiny, but it like really seems like they're mostly just like talking about like giving support and mentorship to the younger students who have just started and like giving them tips and advice. And Xaden is organizing like groups for like them to practice sparring and to learn how to like fight better. And essentially like it's just a group. They're just like gathering to like offer support to each other and to like make sure they stay alive in the situation that none of them chose. And like that's not odd. There have been lots of gatherings over the past few days of like first year and older students from like various regions where they like, you know, like are like, oh my gosh, we grew up together in some capacity. We have some like cultural shared identity and we're going to support each other through this experience, you know? And this is just forbidden because of like who they are. And so Violet's like, oh, this is actually no big deal. Until someone is like, hey, when can we kill Violet, Soar, and Gel? And Xaden is like, you can't kill her. She's mine. I'm going to deal with her. And they're like, oh man, we really wanted to kill her. Her mom is the literal worst. And someone is like, okay, well, we don't punish children for the crimes of their parents. That is not our way. That is their way. You know, like kind of like dissing them, which is fair. That is kind of like a crummy thing to do. Violet waits until like everyone has dispersed and like headed back, and she climbs back down the tree, and as soon as she gets to the bottom, someone comes up from behind her and like grabs her. It's Xaden. He knew she was up there the whole time because apparently he has a shadow signet, which means that he can like talk to do something with shadows. She's like, oh man. She like starts throwing daggers at him. She's like very good at throwing daggers. He's like impressed with her skills. And fascinating. You look all frail and breakable, but you're really a violent little thing, which I really hate. Okay. I hate when, and this is something that happens in another one of my like favorite romantasy series. I think it is like a fairly common romantasy like little trope in which the men will like a like cutie little nickname situation to their love interests, because it's always enemies to lovers, and so they're always like violent to each other initially, and they're like, oh, you're so violent, such a violent little thing. And I find it so upsetting. Like I really hate it, because I think most of the time in these situations, these women are placed in positions where they lack agency and power, even if they like are well trained, which like Violet isn't particularly well trained either. Like their access to just like physical power is limited by like their size, to like belittle their attempts at like maintaining some agency over their own body by being like, oh, it's so cute when you try to like be violent. And I'm like, no. I find it like really upsetting, and I know that's like literally not what any of them intend. I think it's supposed to be like, oh, they're charmed by the fact that they do like have agency over their own body, and that they're like taking things into their own hands and that they're being like these fierce, independent creatures. But I find it upsetting every time. I find it really patronizing that they're always like, violent little thing. And they comment on like how vicious they are in this way that like almost sees it as like cute. I think the intention is to like emphasize the ways in which they like see their strengths in this way, but I feel like it often comes across as just like really demeaning towards these women who are like trying to maintain physical agency over their own lives and bodies through these like small acts of violence. And most of the time violence is the only way that power is like participated in these worlds, particularly in this world, right? Like where murder is like something that can happen on the regular, and violence is like really required of its students to be like, it's so cute that you're so violent. You look so frail, but like, you're kind of like violent. Okay, rant over. Violet's like, no, I'm not going to tell anyone about this meeting. Like, it really just seemed like you were mentoring those younger students, and I really don't think there was anything wrong with it. She knows Dane would have ratted them out because Dane is a snitch, because Dane is the worst of men. But she's like, I see no reason to do that. And Xaden is like, I guess we'll see, because I'm not going to murder you tonight. It's the next morning, and we get Violet is waking up. Rhiannon is not in her bed. Apparently she got some hanky-panky with Tara, who's a second year, and good for her. We love that for her. And Dane is coming to pick up Violet because he picks her up and escorts her to breakfast duty every single day. And he's like, I don't know why you selected breakfast duty. And she's like, I have my reasons. We'll find the reasons out in just a second. But she's also like, you do not need to escort me to breakfast duty. And he's like, I don't mind. And she's like, okay, but I do. Maybe actually. Essentially, he just like wants to be patronizing to her and like be like, I'm so scared you're going to get murdered at any second, before she even has a chance to like breathe and get her coffee. Violet has just learned who her sparring partner will be. It's going to be Orin, and she poisons his breakfast. She takes those berries that she gathered that night she was out and Xaden caught her, and she puts them into his breakfast, and just enough to like make him sick, hopefully. For sparring time, it's actually dragon class time, which is actually fun. They have this professor whose like signet is projectors, is like becoming a projector, and he's like creating these holograms of all these different dragons, and he's like talking about them. And we learn that there's like 100 dragons that are anticipated to be like looking for riders this year, which is less, like 30 less than last year, and even less than the year before that. So like the number of dragons that are willing to bond riders like keeps decreasing, and people are like asking questions, particularly Jack is asking questions about that in the class. And the professor is like, well, the dragons won't tell us. Like the dragons very much only speak to their riders. They really look down at humans as a whole. Slay, we love that for them. Are just like not interested in explaining themselves to humans in general. As he's kind of like popping up different dragons, he pops up this blue dragon named Scale. Is that how you pronounce her name? I don't know. Please don't ask me. But Scale is Xaden's dragon, and she's this like gorgeous big blue dragon, and they talk about her and how she's like the coolest, and she's kind of mean, and if you see her without Xaden around, like you should probably GTF out, because she might just explode you for no reason, like burn you up, because she feels like it. And I love that energy. Then we talk about these black dragons, because I think Jack again asked about them. And black dragons are the rarest, coolest, smartest, toughest, most specialist dragons that there is. And there's really only like 2 black dragons around right now. We have like General Somebody's dragon is a black dragon, and then there is an unbonded black dragon, but like he hasn't accepted a rider in years, and he's not anticipated to accept a rider this year. It doesn't seem like he's gonna like participate in the threshing where the dragons are picked. And Jack's like, I want him to be my dragon, and the professor's like, okay, too bad. He doesn't seem like he's interested in that. Essentially, like his last rider died at the same time that Brennan died during that Tereshi rebellion, and he hasn't bonded a new rider since. It's sparring time. As soon as she gets to like the sparring ring, Dane's like, hey Violet, can I talk to you? It seems like Orin, the guy you're supposed to spar today, is gonna try to kill you. I heard them talking about it. Just an FYI. And Jack like overhears this, or like, I don't know. Jack is just like sometimes always around. And he's like, I hope Orin doesn't kill you, because I would be the one to kill you. And Violet is like, okay, great. Thanks everyone. Bye. And then she goes to fight Orin. Orin is like this big like bulky guy, and he's like really strong, but because he's kind of like so much larger than Violet is able to be so much faster than him, and she's able to kind of like spin around and like move quick enough where he kind of like stumbles and falls to the ground, and normally he wouldn't, he'd just get back up and then mush Violet, but because she poisoned his breakfast, as soon as he gets to the ground, he starts like puking everywhere. He's like throwing up everywhere, and so the professor makes him yield, because like you can't fight people while you're throwing up everywhere, and so Violet wins the match by default. We then get kind of like a flash forward through a couple weeks as she explains that this scheme continues to work again and again for her. She continues poisoning people 5 times, all slightly differently, and is able to use those like poison's effects to like best them. So whether it's them like getting sick, or whether it's like their brain is so foggy that Violet's able to like outsmart them on the mat or whatever, she's able to best them. But the 6th time, she messes up her timing on the poison. She poisons them at breakfast, and unfortunately the girlie is like too sick to go to sparring class, and so she's already at like the girlie Violet is supposed to fight is already at the healers when sparring class comes, and so Violet now doesn't have a partner. But you know who should volunteer? Xaden. Dun dun dun. That's where we're going to leave things on this chapter, is she's going to have to fight Xaden, this boy who we've been told is going to try to kill her, even though like all evidence points to he doesn't want to kill her based on the fact that he hasn't killed her yet. Maybe he doesn't believe we should just murder children. It's a bold belief, but I feel like Xaden might feel that. A spoiler, Xaden doesn't kill her. Guys, come on. Even if you haven't read this book, you should know better than that. Of course he doesn't kill her. What would the rest of the book be? He's like, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to use this as a teaching opportunity because that's what we should do. He is about a teaching pedagogy where there's less murdering and more teaching, more educating. And we do have to admire him for that. You know, it seems like that would be the bare minimum, like the bar is on the floor, but unfortunately the bar is on the floor. So we have to be grateful that he has passed it. Anyway, he leaves all his weapons on the side in this like swaggering show of like, I don't need weapons. And then he just like proceeds to take Violet's weapons like one by one from her. He does call her Violence the whole time, a nickname he will use regularly. For, I think, the remainder of these next 2 books. Not always, but like often. He's like talking to her as they spar. He's like whispering in her ears, obviously. And he's like, I know you've been poisoning people. And she's like, oops. And he's like, I mean, I'm not going to tell anyone, but you really do need to learn how to like fight people without poisoning them, because you are going to encounter situations in which poisoning is not an option. Like if we are doing war and you're fighting a griffin, you're not going to have an opportunity to poison the griffin first, you know? Or like if someone attacks you in the hallway, you're not going to have the opportunity to be like, hold on, can you eat a snack really quick before you come fight me? And so he's like, you do need to learn how to fight people. Anyway, they're wrestling around fighting. Xaden is like whispering things in her ear. Dane is on the sidelines being like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm gonna have to watch my very best friend die. Guys, isn't this so sad for me that I'm gonna have to watch my very best friend die? It's so sad for me, isn't it? And at the same time, Violet is like, wow, this man is really hot. Talking about Xaden, not about Dane. Thank God. She thinks to herself, my breath catches and my body warms. The traitorous bitch. You are not attracted to toxic men, I remind myself. And yet, here I am, getting all attracted. I have been since the very first second I saw him. And you know what, Violet? We've all done it. We've all looked at a man and been like, I should not. Bad. Down. Like, do not get attracted to this man. He's trouble and a half. But, like, sometimes it happens. It happens to the best of us. And it is happening to Vi in this moment. Anyway, they finish. Violet has to yield because Xaden like wrenches her shoulder behind her. She's out of daggers. She has to yield. Oh no, she has 1 dagger left. But Xaden leaves it because he says, I don't like my women defenseless. Or something like that. He says some line that like, I don't know, is like halfway between flirty and not flirty. And then as he's leaving the like sparring ring, he turns to Dane and he says, she could use a little less protection and a little more instruction. Xaden stares Dane down until he nods. Which is true. I do like think that is a powerful thing to say and a good reminder for Dane, because she does need to know that. Later that night, she's in Dane's room. He is kind of like helping her. He's like giving her a back massage to like work out the kinks that she got from fighting that day. And he's like, please, Violet, please go to the scribes, please. And she's like, no. No, thank you. And he's like, please, they say they'll still take you. They'll take you as a first year. We don't have to tell your mom. Like, by the time she finds out, like, it'll be too late. And Violet is like, you are being so annoying. She's like, every single day, you're like, please, Violet, go to the scribes. Like, can we, like, move on? He is like, no. Okay. Next chapter. Chapter 10. We're getting into the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet is this, like, American Ninja Warrior style obstacle course up the side of a cliff. We've talked about it briefly, but now it's Gauntlet time. It's been like 2 months that they've been at school, but they haven't had access to the Gauntlet yet, because the Gauntlet is something you only get to do for like 2.5 weeks of the school year. They get like 2.5 weeks to train. They get 9 sessions on the Gauntlet before they have to like claim it for real. And that's like part of the challenge, is they don't get a ton of training time with it. In order to get to like the next stage in Dragon Rider Academy life, they have to pass this Gauntlet, because that's how the order for presentation day, which is like that reverse dragon parade, is determined. And they say like, you're not, like, if you can't make it up during the training sessions, you can like climb back down on the ropes, but if you on the actual day, like, you're not allowed to climb back down on the ropes. You either make it to the top or you fall to your death. But like, how are they going to stop you from climbing back down on the ropes? I feel like if you stayed up there long enough, you could probably climb back down on the ropes when no one was looking. Violet needs to figure out how to get across it. We also are introduced to like the full squad, I think, for the first time, and I am going to read you the list of the full squadron. Okay, so we have Sawyer. Sawyer is a second year student. Well, he's a first year by like Dragon Rider standards, but he got like held back essentially because he didn't get a dragon. So he's done this before. So we have Sawyer, and then we have Pryor, Trina, Tynan, Rhiannon, Riddick, Violet, Aurelia, and Luca are in their squad. Well, are the first years in their squad. There might be second years and third years. It's confusing to me how many people are in the school. There's like 36 squads total in the school, and I don't know how many of those squads are like, I assume all the squads are like mixed year, or maybe they're not. I don't know. Okay, I don't. But their squad right now is the only one who hasn't lost any members yet. They have the full squad that they've had since the first day of school. It's time to go through the Gauntlet. I'm going to draw you a diagram. There are 5 ascents that this Gauntlet has, like 5 sections that they have to pass through. The first one is this like spinning, there's one singular spinning log that they have to balance across, and then this like series of pillars, and then finally a spinning wheel that they have to manage to jump through. So that's the first ascent. They go through that, and they're back on solid ground, and then they go up to the next ascent. And the next ascent are these like hanging balls. I'm thinking like Wrecking Ball, Miley Cyrus style situation. They have to cross these hanging balls. Then the next one is essentially what I am picturing as like monkey bars, but monkey bars that kind of go up. They're monkey bars at an angle. And then a few more of those like pillars they have to walk across, but this time they're like shaking. They're like moving pillars they have to balance on. Then the fourth ascent is more spinning logs. Seems like a series of them rather than just one. And then this chimney overhang. And this is the part where Violet starts to have trouble. She is going to cross these. She gets through the first 3 without too much trouble. But this chimney overhang is like pretty broad. What you're supposed to do is kind of like spider monkey onto it and like shimmy your way up. But she is too short to like effectively do that. And so she's not able to get a good grip on it. And it does like hang over things. So you do need like a pretty substantially strong grip to like climb up it. And so she kind of gets stuck there. That's where she stops. And so she doesn't get to the last obstacle, which is this like big ramp. It's the warped wall from American Ninja Warrior. So anyway, Violet is stuck on this obstacle, and ahead of her, Aurelia is like trying to like encourage her, or maybe she's behind her. She's also on the obstacle course. She's trying to shout encouragements at Violet. Violet is like just standing there like reciting dragon facts, because again, that's how she calms herself, is by reciting facts, which is a weird thing, and I don't think a real thing, but it's what Violet does. Thinking about the different types of dragons today, those are the facts she's working on, and the she gives us some information about a dragon type called a Feathertail. A Feathertail is this like super rare, super secretive type of dragon that hasn't actually been seen outside of the Vale in like decades, but is not a good dragon for bonding with riders anyway, because Feathertails are like quite small dragons, but more importantly, they like really hate violence. They're non-violent dragons. Okay, so she's reciting that information to herself as she's trying to figure out how to get like over this chimney rock situation, when she looks up and Aurelia's screaming. She falls off the cliff and dies. Bye, Aurelia. See ya never. The rest of the chapter really is just Violet being sad. She decides to take like control of burning Aurelia's stuff. That is, again, as we talked about, the tradition is that they burn everything and like give it to the god Malik, who's in charge of like death god. And Dragon Rider parents have the option to like get their stuff and then burn it privately, or they can just have the school do it. And her parents had arranged to have the school do it, and so Violet makes sure that like someone that knew her is there and burns her things for her. Then afterwards, she sneaks out past curfew and she like finds a little spot, and she's just like sitting there chilling, thinking about like maybe she should join the scribe quadrant. She's like very worried about not being able to do the gauntlet, and Xaden finds her. He's like walking around and he sees her, and they go back and forth with hostile banter. And Violet is like, are you ever going to kill me? Like, could you let me know when you're going to kill me? And Xaden is like, sorry, am I ruining your schedule? Violet is like, I mean, I wouldn't want to put you into any trouble by having you kill me. And Xaden says, killing you wouldn't be any trouble, Violence. It's leaving you alive that seems to cause me the majority of trouble. But then he starts talking about how like every day that he keeps her alive, he knows that he's like a better person than the people that killed his parents or something. I don't know. He's like talking with her. They're like chatting, and she's talking about how she's feeling like really hopeless when it comes to passing the gauntlet, and how she's like really sad because her friend Aurelia just died. And he talks about how death is like such a like prominent part of this place, and how she can't just like, she's gonna have to learn how to like move past it because it is something that they're gonna encounter again and again. And then he gives her like a little pep talk almost. It's kind of a mean pep talk, but it's still a pep talk. He says to her, maybe if you stopped sulking in your self-pity, you'd see that you have everything you need to scale that gauntlet. He calls after me, his voice echoing down the hallway. The right way isn't the only way of doing things. Okay, he gives her some advice, some things to like think about, which is good because we kind of jump ahead to Gauntlet Day. So 2 weeks have passed. It's the day before the gauntlet. She still hasn't climbed it. She doesn't know what she's going to do. They're in their last training session. She still is not able to climb that chimney. And so she hasn't even seen the fifth like ascent. She hasn't even seen the fifth obstacle because she can't get past this fourth one. It's the next day. It's actual presentation day. It's Gauntlet Day. Dane is literally still trying to get her to run away. He's like, they're like walking to the gauntlet, and he's like, I could get you out like literally right now. Dane says to her, change your mind. His hands find mine, concealed by our tight formation as we descend through the passage. Please. I can't. I shake my head. Any more than you would leave Kath and run to the scribes yourself. That's different. His hand squeezes mine. I can feel the tension in his fingers, in his arms. I'm a rider. And Violet says, well, maybe I am too. As they arrive at the gauntlet, Dane turns to her and says, what has changed between now and the parapet? And Violet says, me. I've changed. Okay. Slay. All right, it's time. Violet is one of the last people on her team to ascend the gauntlet. It's her turn, and she has a little bit of a scheme cooked up. She makes it through the first 3 ascents like she has been without too much trouble. And then as she gets to that chimney rock, this time she grabs a rope. So there are these ropes on the course, and the ropes are really there just to like catch yourself if you start to fall. If you grab a rope, it like adds 30 seconds immediately to your time, but like better add 30 seconds than be dead. And so she knows by grabbing this rope, it's going to cost her 30 seconds. But instead of using it to help her if she's falling, she's actually like rigs up a way for her to kind of use that rope to essentially like, it seems like I'm trying to like, it was hard for me to kind of picture this section, but it seems like kind of like to belay herself like up this rock. She like uses the rope to help pull herself up to the top of that. And then she's on to the 5th thing, that ramp. It's a wooden ramp that like curves up at the end, like it's like sloped like a bowl. So you have to like run up it it's 20 feet tall. So you have to run up it as far as you can, but then gravity starts to pull you down. So you have to get like quite a lot of speed going. And Violet knows she's like quite small. Obviously she's very short, we're told again and again. And so she doesn't really have that height advantage. And what Violet winds up doing is she takes one of her daggers and she slides, as she's like starting to like gravity grabs her on the ramp, she stabs her dagger into the ramp and is able to like hoist herself up the last foot or two. And she makes it to the top. Everyone's so excited because during all of the trainings she was not able to. But Amber, who's a girl from another squad, is watching this obviously and is immediately like, she's a cheater. She like used foreign objects on the field of play, not once but twice, and that's like absolutely not allowed. And Violet's like, okay, I used the rope. The ropes are there to be used, and I know that's going to cost me 30 seconds, but like, I'm allowed to use the rope. And Amber concedes that one, but she's like, but the dagger, like, you brought on there. And then Violet says, a rider may only bring to the quadrant the items that they can carry. I start. Are you quoting the codex to me? Amber shouts. And they shall not be separated from those items no matter what they may be, I continue. For once carried across the parapet, they are considered part of their person. Article 3, Section 6, Addendum B. Her blue eyes flare wide as I glance at her. That addendum was written to make thievery an executionable offense. Correct, I nod, looking between her and the onyx eyes that see straight through me. But in doing so, it gave any item carried across the parapet the status of being a part of the rider. I unsheath the chipped and battered blade with a sharp bite of pain in my palms. This isn't a challenge blade. It's one I carried across, and therefore a part of myself. And Xaden, who is the wing leader, is the one who gets to like determine whether this is allowable or not as a reasoning for this. And he's like, yeah, you know what? She's got you on a technicality. It seems to me that's reasonable. Violet is okay to go to the presentation. And everyone cheers and is like, yay, Violet, you did it. And then Violet looks down and her like hands are completely shredded. Like now that she's like done the pain of what has befallen her as she went through the obstacle course, like dawns on her, and she like needs to bind up her hands because she's dripping blood everywhere. But she did it. She did the gauntlet. Next is the presentation. We like really get to see dragons for the first time. We're getting into like the dragon part. Thank goodness. The first like lots of chapters is like dragon light, which is a bummer because my favorite part of this book is the dragons. I love the dragons. All right, we are finally in the portion of the book where we like really get to deal with dragons, which is great. I feel like I've been a whiner kind of about the beginning of the book, and I really did enjoy this book. I really don't enjoy Dane, and my favorite parts of these books are the dragons. So far, there's been not very many dragons, but we are about to really get into the dragons, and I'm excited about it. Okay, so after the gauntlet, they do... Did we already do the presentation? No, we already did the presentation. We already talked about that. No, I didn't. I did not tell you about presentation day. For some reason, I just like skipped over this chapter. Don't know why. I just like didn't do it. So now here I am telling you about it. It is midnight. I'm editing this video. After the gauntlet, Violet and the rest of her team placed 11th out of the 36 squads that were there, which is like pretty decent. Top third. So good on Violet, even though she maybe cheated a little bit. Okay, so like I said, presentation day is the like reverse dragon parade. So the dragons are parading and the students like parade past the dragons, and then they turn around and walk back past the dragons. And it's just a way for them to like the dragons to get a vibe, you know, essentially for the dragons to get like their first exposure to these kids in a real capacity, these students in a real capacity. So then on threshing day, they know who they're going after. The instructions are like pretty simple, like walk. Again, you're not supposed to bunch up. You're not supposed to bunch up because if you are standing next to someone who a dragon doesn't like and the dragon lights them on fire, then you will also get lit on fire. So it's best practices to stay far from the person in front of you, like 7 feet. Give yourself some distance from the person in front of you. But beyond that, there's not a lot of rules. Oh, you're supposed to chat. You're supposed to like play it cool, chat, because if you're chatting, it shows that you're like a good team member and that like you'll do good teamwork, I guess. And so it's time to begin. And Violet really takes this to heart, and she is strolling along. She's chatting with Rhiannon, and they get to, and like things are going pretty well. They get to the end of the line with the dragons. At the very end, there is a little feather tail dragon. She's yellow gold, and Prior and Luca and Tynan start like making fun of this little dragon. And they're like, oh my gosh, why is there this tiny baby feather tail here? And I will tell you why there's a tiny baby feather tail there. It's because it's what Violet was thinking about while she was on the Gauntlet. She's manifesting Queen. She manifested this feather tail right here, right now. Anyway, they're being really mean. It's this little baby dragon. And they're like, oh my gosh, look at this cute, dumb dragon. He's like, we should kill it, obviously, because it's too dangerous to have this kind of dragon out and about. Someone's going to bond with it, and this dragon's not going to be able to even do war. So, like, we should kill it. And Violet is like, I think that's maybe, like, a bad idea. Like, maybe cut the killing dragon talk while we're in front of the dragons. Anyway, I think they're able to like shift the subject, and then they start talking about like venom and wyverns and this like folklore that we'll reference again and again that comes from Violet's dad. And as they're like chatting about this, Prior immediately gets burnt up, like almost instantly, as they like turn around and they're starting to walk back. And they're like, they're trying to play it cool, as one of their comrades just got burnt up, but he was being hecka rude, and so he did indeed deserve it. And now everyone's a little bit more on edge because someone did just get burnt up right in front of them. You know, when you see one of your friends literally get burnt alive in front of you, changes the vibe, changes the mood. They're trying to play it cool when all of a sudden these two green dragons approach Violet. They get really up in her business. They're like sniffing at her directly. She's trying to play it calm, cool, collected, remember what she knows about green dragons. But they're like truly like getting all up in her business. And she realizes that they're smelling the dragon scales that Mira, her sister, had sewn into her armor. So her armor has this like plate of dragon scales that Mira had like shrunk down to be like small enough to fit on armor and like sewn in. And so it's actually been super helpful. There's been a couple instances where people have tried to like strike Violet over her heart, and they can't because she has dragon scales there. But these dragons are obviously smelling this other dragon. And so Violet explains, she's like, hey guys, don't even worry about it. It is like my sister's dragon. You might know her. And they're like, okay, cool. The dragons are. And they leave her alone. And then they're almost done. They're almost through the presentation, breathing a sigh of relief when the last girly in the line, Luca, gets burnt by fire too. So they are down 2 members from the presentation. Okay, that was the presentation. They saw some dragons. The feathertail was there. They were like, whoa, that's crazy. Feathertails aren't normally anywhere. They're like the sneakiest, most mysterious type of dragon. But like I said, Violet Queen manifested it. And that's all. Okay, back to your regular scheduled programming. So I don't really know how much time has elapsed, but after like the presentation, I think it's like a few weeks later, because they do the presentation at the beginning of fall, and we're told that the threshing is always on October 1st. Like exactly, like that's threshing day, no matter kind of what day of the week it falls on or anything like that. Also, I want to make a note. Rebecca Yarros chose to use like regular days of the week and months. She like didn't do anything weird with that, and I like really respect that choice. I think that's a great choice. I think it is helpful for readers. I know there's like some debate in the fantasy worlds about whether like that's appropriate, because you know, if they didn't have the Roman Empire, how do they have the months? I really see it, and I've heard other people say this as well. This is not an original thought, that like fantasy worlds are always like works in translation. Like you are always translating a fantasy world into essentially like American English. And so it's weird to me when we like very diligently avoid certain words and expressions. Like obviously it'd be weird if we started calling things that were like not the same thing iPhones, but like if we have a concept similar to months because they like judge things by cycles of the moon, it seems just as easy to me to start calling those things like August and October rather than being like the 6th moon cycle in the warm season. You know, like sometimes I think we get a little dramatic about that. It stems from this thing where it's like, if you can't have a fantasy book that talks about champagne because champagne is specific to like the Champagne region in France, and it's like, well, you know, we don't always use champagne appropriately. Like we largely use it to mean sparkling wine. So like, why wouldn't we translate a sparkling wine to the word champagne? Okay, that's a side rant, not actually what's happening. Anyway, it's threshing day. Essentially, the plan for threshing day, what happens is all of the first years go out into wilderness. Wilderness sounds a little dramatic, but like the like nature around Basigiath War College, and they like wait for a dragon to pick them. You can like obviously go and like seek out dragons, but also dragons, if you're like rude or they just don't like you, dragons can like explode you. they are really encouraged to like be out by themselves, because if they're in groups, it's actually harder for you to get picked, because like your dragon can't like seek you out. And also like if a dragon gets mad, he will explode you and your friends that you're hanging out with. So you're like encouraged to go by yourself, and also to like listen to your heart. There seems to be some sense that there's then like, whether it's your dragon like connecting into your brain early or something like that, where you'll be able to kind of like sense if it feels right, if your dragon feels right. So Violet's been out most of the day now. She's seen like a lot of dragons fly out of the wilderness overhead, and she's beginning to get worried that she's like not going to have a dragon match up with her. She's not going to find her dragon buddy because so many are looming. And she decides to climb up into a tree to get like a better lay of the landscape, see what other dragons are out there, see who else is out there. And as she climbs up into this tree, pretty quickly she hears this group of 3 men, and it is Tynan, Jack, and Odin, all 3 of whom are people who have actively tried to kill her, and I guess they've bonded over their desire to kill her. And they're wandering around talking, and they're planning to go find that little Feathertail, the little gold dragon that showed up at the presentation, and go kill it. This part is a little confusing to me. Like, why do they want to kill it? I think we are supposed to believe that like they are just like seeking out anything weak in order to like kill it and get rid of it. But like, their goal on this day would be to like just get a dragon. Like that seems like the number one goal. Like, why are they doing this like side quest that they've decided they need to do? It doesn't like totally make sense to me. And also and they're like, well, if we don't kill this little dragon, it's gonna like put the whole like military at risk, because it'll be like the weak link, and like that is the reason they also want to kill Violet, because she's like the weak link and things. But like, I don't know. They're also depicted as like very self-centered. So like, why would they care? Like, as long as you have a cool, strong dragon, why would you care if there's a weak, lame dragon out there? I don't know. I don't totally understand their reasoning. I don't think we're necessarily supposed to. They're kind of just like bad news bears. Violet is like, oh my gosh, no, we can't just let them kill a cute little baby. Well, we don't know it's a baby yet. We will in a second here. We can't let them kill that like cute little feathertail dragon. Like, she's a good little lady, and that's not cool. And so she decides she's going to run ahead and like warn that dragon. And she gets the dragon before they do. And she's like, okay, you have to fly off. You have to fly away. And the dragon is just like looking at her. And she is like, okay, come on. Because like this dragon is not going to be able to defend itself. It seems to be about the size of a horse, approximately horse sized. But it doesn't even have claws. Like, it has little paws, and it's like fluffy. And it just like can't blow flames, she doesn't think. And she's like, this is not going to go good for it. But the dragon just like looks at her and does not fly away. And then the boys approach, and they're like, oh my gosh, perfect, a 2-for-1 deal. We can like get Violet, and we can get this little fluffy dumb dragon. And Violet also rolls her ankle. I forgot to mention that. She rolls her ankle as she's running there, which as a girly, I roll my ankle all the time. I'm an ankle rolling girl. I've sprained an ankle more times than I can count. One time I broke my ankle getting off of the school bus, just like stepping off of it. And so she's trying to like fight these guys off. She can't really like move anywhere because her ankle hurts really bad. So like she can't like kick them or really like go after them. She's kind of just like stuck standing. She's like throwing her daggers. She hits Jack in the shoulder and like gets his shoulder pretty badly. And he drops his sword, and then he winds up running off at some point. But she still has 2 like men after her, and she's on a bad ankle, and she's like trying to fight them off and protect this little baby dragon who's still just like standing there. And it's not like going super well. But then Xaden arrives. Unfortunately, this is not as helpful as one might hope, because Xaden is a 3rd year, and so he's not allowed to interfere at all in the threshing. Like, he cannot interact with anyone. I don't know what the specifics of the rules are, but like, he's not supposed to do anything. So him and his dragon Sagael are just like standing there, and one of the boys, I think Auden, even says, you can't like interfere in this because it's the threshing. And it's like very clear that she's not going to win this fight. Xaden is kind of like trying to narrate things in the back so she isn't like taken by surprise, but like, again, he like can't really help her, so she's still like 2 against 1. She's like on the ground, like Tynan is about to like literally murder her. I don't know if she's on the ground or if he's just gonna kill her. I don't remember, but she's like about to get killed. And all of a sudden in her head, she hears this like gruff, grumpy male voice go, step aside, Silver One. And then Violet moves, and this giant black dragon has appeared in this meadow, and he flames Tynan and kills him. Odin has like passed out. I think Violet like was able to knock him unconscious. And now Violet's like, oh my gosh, hey. Sagael and Zan I was going to call him Xander. Xaden fly away, just leaving this big black dragon, the little gold dragon, and Violet in this field. And the big black dragon is like, hey, Violet, get on my back. It's time to go. And she has a really hard time getting up. He's like absolutely gigantic. It says that she like barely reaches his ankle. Like he is, I don't know, 20, 30 feet tall. Like to get from the ground to his back is like high. It's very hard for me to like picture how big these dragons are. Anyway, he has to help her. He has to like stick his leg out so she can like climb up it like a ramp, because again, she's like injured and she's also like pretty tiny. So the combination of those things doesn't make it super easy for her to get on top of him, but she's able to do it. That is like very atypical of dragons. Most of the time dragons won't like assist their riders. Like very much the dragon and the rider are seen as like equals, and the dragon won't like submit in that way to the rider. But obviously this guy is being a good citizen for whatever reason. And then the black dragon and the gold dragon like kind of like take off, and almost immediately as they like launch into the air, Violet falls off of her dragon. She is not strong enough to like hold on to him, and he's so big that it's hard to like kind of like get her legs where she needs to get them, and so she almost immediately slips off. She thinks she's gonna fall and die, but Terran does catch her with his claws. He's like, get it together, girly. But he winds up using his magic after that to like strap her onto his back, essentially. He like binds her to his back with a bit of his magic, and then they fly off where like back to the War College where they're going to meet everyone else. And they're kind of like chatting in their heads as they fly, because once you are like dragon and rider and you're bonded, you have like a mental connection in which you can like talk to each other with your thoughts, you know? And Violet asks Terran, she says, why did you choose me? And Terran says, because you saved her. Terran is her big black dragon. He hasn't actually introduced himself yet, but I'm going to tell you his name. And Violet says, dragons value strength and cunning and ferocity in their riders. And she's like, I've got none of those attributes. Like, I'm like the weakest link in here. Like, why would you, the coolest dragon that is available for bonding at this moment, choose me to be a rider? And Terran says, please do tell me more about what I should value. You are the smartest of your year, the most cunning. You defended the smallest with ferocity, and the strength of courage is more important than physical strength, since you apparently needed to know that before we land. And they like chat some more. He introduces himself with like his full government name, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I'm butchering all the names that I have access to, so like we're not going to give me access to more. And they like fly back to the little meetup spot with everybody else. They land, and again, Terran has to like assist Violet down. She can't get down by herself. He has to like stick his leg out and turn it into like a little slide for her to slip and slide down. Then Violet has to go to like the role keeper. This is like the official way that they like declare that a dragon is theirs. She has to go up to the role keeper and be like, hi, my name's Violet, and this is my dragon. And she gives his like formal name. And her mother is like standing there kind of like side-eyeing her. So she goes up to the role keeper and she has to like declare Terran's like full government name. And then she's about to like leave when she hears like a small, sweet, high-pitched voice in her head that goes, and Adarna. Again, she gives Adarna's full name, but I'm not going to try to pronounce it. And Violet is like, Terran, what do I do? This girly, the little gold girly, is like, hello. And Terran is like, tell the role keeper your second dragon's name. You have like 2 dragons, girly. We both claim you. And so Violet's like, okay, also I have a second dragon named Adarna. And then everyone goes crazy because remember, I think we mentioned it earlier, there was not enough dragons for everyone as it was. Like there was 100 dragons and like 170 students that needed to be bonded to dragons. And like some people will die in the threshing, which, I mean, we saw one guy, but like people get flamed during the threshing all the time. But still, there's going to be like a lot of unbonded riders in the year. And so like to have a ton of unbonded riders, and Violet is taking 2 dragons for 1 girl, it's kind of crazy. So everyone's freaking out. The administration, like her mother and kind of like all the people that are in charge are like talking about it. Violet starts like looking around and seeing like kind of what else the happenings are. We're at pretty much the end of the threshing day at this point. She does see Jack, the like psychopath whose shoulder she just like sliced. He did wind up bonding with a dragon. He has like a little orange dragon. Violet gets her injuries tended to. She gets like her ankle wrapped, and I think she has a couple other injuries that they bind up for her, so she's feeling a little bit better, a little bit more taken care of. The administration is like, again, just like frantic. They don't know what to do about the fact that Violet has 2 dragons. And Taryn says to her, like, well, I don't even know why they're worried about it, because like it's the dragons that get to decide. And she's standing by one of the professors, the like dragon professor. Professor K. like kind of like seconds essentially what Taryn is saying, being like, yeah, the dragons get to pick. Like, I don't know what, we like to pretend that like we're in charge of the dragons, but like the dragons are in charge of themselves and we shan't tell them what to do. And Taryn is then like, okay, we actually need to go, me and Adarna need to go talk to the Empyrean, which is like essentially the dragon government, and see what they say. Like, they will be the final say about whether you can have 2 dragons or not. So like, you stay here, you stay with your wing leader. And she's like, you mean my squad leader, Dane? My wing leader wants me dead. And Taryn's like, no, you're wing leader. I said what I said. Obviously. It's a very surreal moment, you know? If you know, you know, for Bakatar. And except it's like slightly better explained almost immediately. And Violet's like, okay, whatever. And while this is happening, the biggest black dragon, the only dragon bigger than Taryn, than Violet's dragon, Kodog, arrives with General Melgren, and they arrive, and I think they're here for the like dragon discussions of whether Violet can have 2 dragons. While the dragons are gone having dragon meetings, Violet is very excited to chat with Rhiannon and Ridoc. Both of them got dragons, so did Sawyer, and so that's kind of like what's left of their squad is the 5 of them. I believe 5 of the 9 first years for their squad made it. They got bonded to dragons. Rhiannon got a green dragon named Fiergi, and Ridoc got a brown dragon named Iotrom, and Sawyer got a red dragon named Slisag. This book has so many dragon names, and dragon names are all very difficult for me to pronounce in general because they are not, I would say, like common American groupings of letters, you know? Like, I can identify some like prefixes, some suffixes, some syllables. These are not syllables I've seen before, especially not slid together like this. So I'm just out here trying my best. Taryn is Taryn, Adarna is Adarna. Everyone else, trying my best. Anyway, they're like chatting about what happened in the threshing, kind of sharing their stories. Obviously, everyone is so eager to hear out what Violet has to say about like what happened with Adarna and like what happened with like Jack and Odin and Tynan and stuff. And she's like kind of telling the story when all of a sudden this agitating, grating voice, it's Dane. Dane's here, and he's like, Violet, you cannot have 2 dragons. You have to pick one, and you need to pick the small gold one. I know I said pick one a second ago. I was lying. You need to break up with the black dragon and you only keep the gold dragon. And Violet is like, hey buddy, that's not how this freaking works. The dragons select the riders. It's not vice versa. I can't be like, no, like you can't really reject a dragon bond. And he's like, you have to. It's unsafe for you to have this big black dragon. And he's like, actually, this gold dragon could not work out well for you because the feather tail is like so cute and little and petite and obviously couldn't even fly you into battle. Like, she's too little. And you could just be a professor here at the school. It would be so great. You could just like stay at the school this whole time and you would never even be in the danger of battle. And she's like, what the hell, Dane, are you even saying? Like, that's not how this works. And then he's like, did you know that black dragon, Taryn, is actually mated? He's bonded. His mate is Sagal, Xaden's dragon. So if you stick with Taryn, then you and Xaden will be having to be like stationed together for the rest of your lives because mated dragons can't be apart. Like, bonded pair dragons cannot be apart for very long because they can't. And so, like, essentially, they're, like, a little family group now. Like, now she's in a like, committed relationship with Xaden without even asking. Speaking of Xaden, he does arrive, and he starts bickering with Dane because it, like, comes out that Xaden kind of, like, interfered with the threshing in terms of, like, making sure Violet didn't die. And Xaden was like, well, wouldn't have you helped Violet? And Dane was like, not if it would have broken the rules. And we spent a lot of time over these next few chapters talking about how, like, Dane is, like, such a rule follower, even when it doesn't make sense. Like, he will follow rules above anything else. And I just, like, have not seen that to be true. Like, Dane has spent this whole book trying to figure out ways to get Violet out of the Dragon Rider quadrant by any means necessary. Like, he's like, we're gonna sneak her out, we're gonna break these rules, we're questioning authority. Like, it seems like that's what he wants to do all the time. Like, he seems actually like quite comfortable breaking rules when it serves him. So I don't know why we're pretending that he's like never breaks a rule. He just only breaks rules that like makes sense to him in the moment. Anyway, he's like, I wouldn't have broken a rule to help Violet, which I don't know. I think he might have. Or not to give Dane more credit than he deserves. I would literally never give Dane any credit. But I just don't think he's like an upstanding rule follower, as they like to paint him out. Anyway, Dane accused Xaden of kind of orchestrating this whole thing with Taryn, and Xaden is like, why would I want to tie myself to her? That's stupid. I didn't do it. Sigale did. Sigale obviously saw what was happening with Adarna, and she used her mind talking to call her dragon husband to come deal with us. So it was the dragon's doing, not Xaden's. And then Xaden also explains that like now this actually gives him a lot of reason to keep Violet alive, because essentially if Violet dies, it doesn't necessarily mean that her dragon would die, but it wouldn't be good for Taryn. Like, it would probably really dramatically weaken him, and it could kill him. And if he died, then Sigale dies. And if Sigale dies, then Xander dies. So essentially, all 4 lives are kind of like bound together now because of this. Also, he explains that Violet will now be a huge target, if she wasn't already a huge target, because people will want access to her dragon. And there are so many there are so many people who didn't become writers this year, so many unbound writers that will clearly want a dragon of their own. And if they kill Violet, then like there's a chance that like Taryn will select one of them. And it's best to do that early before the bond between dragon and writer like really solidifies. So over the next few weeks will be like one of the most dangerous times for Violet kind of interpersonally within the college, which is great. I mean, like, people have been trying to murder her anyway, so I don't know if this changes her life a whole lot, but maybe a bit. And then Taryn finally returns, and Taryn is like, hey, the dragon said we're cool. You have 2 dragons now. Yay, good for you. And then all of the dragons and riders and newly bonded riders line up, and they get these like tattoos that the dragons like use magic to put on them, like connect dragon and rider together. And Violet's is on her back, and it is essentially the cover of the novel Fourthwing. It's like a black dragon with a gold dragon like inside of it. And then she's like standing there, and then Dane comes over and kisses her, and she's like, woo, woo. That's not really what she was hoping for in her life, but sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you get what you don't want. She actually thinks to herself, it was everything I had ever wanted. Okay, girl, get a life, but I don't want it anymore. And as a girly who has been living in a Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande Wicked world for the past few months, I immediately thought of Defying Gravity. I would sing it for you, but unfortunately I do not have a voice like Cynthia Erivo. Post-Threshing, Violet does finally have her own bedroom. Remember, they were in the dorms when they were first started, but now that they all have dragons, they get to go have bedrooms. Yay, we're so excited for them. She has been taken off of breakfast duty and now is working in the archives as like her chores. And she like goes and gathers manuscripts. She has to go to the scribe quadrant, and she goes to like the big library there and like picks up manuscripts for professors and like delivers letters and things. Because all of the like chores that were like less desirable, like breakfast duty, have been given to unbonded writers, because the ones who are newly bonded need their energy to like train, because now they have new training. They both will have magic training once their like magic kind of solidifies. Violet hasn't yet, but she will eventually. And then they also have like flying training, in which they're going out like, I don't know if it's every day or multiple times a week, to go fly around on their dragons. And we are starting with like the first day of flying training. Right now, everyone kind of wants to be her friend. Like, all of the social hierarchies at the college like kind of rearrange themselves in this post-dragon world, because the bigger, stronger, cooler, tougher your dragon is, the more like social power that kind of wields. So like Jack Barlow, although he wound up getting a dragon, like he did bond with a dragon, his dragon is like really small and kind of like not as cool, so people don't want to hang out with him. And then the unbonded riders no one really wants to hang out with. And finally, we're seeing, I like had questions about this earlier, if you recall, we're seeing like the full squad come together, in which the second and third years are also kind of like associated with the first years a little bit more closely, because there is, although people will still be dying, okay, there's like much less death now that people have bonded with their dragons. It kind of like solidifies what is happening. And so there's this like reestablishing of like who's sitting with who. And Imogen, the girl who had tried to kill Violet that very first day in the sparring rings, winds up sitting next to Violet at breakfast and is like, I'm actually going to train you after classes today. So get excited for that. Violet is like, no, that's okay. I've been like practicing with Rhiannon. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's so good. I'm glad. But also you need to strength train. You're like not going to have enough muscles to fly around on your dragon. So you got to, build your strength. We're going to do some like muscle building. Anyway, it's time for flight lessons, finally. It is just Terran out there. There is no Adarna because Adarna cannot fly or cannot carry Violet. She can obviously fly, but she can't carry Violet. So there's no need for her to come to flying lessons because, like, what would she do? Violet misses her. She like never gets to see the bummer. Terran is grumpy and old and a cranky man. I love him. He's my favorite character in this whole book. But he is a grumpy old man. And Adarna is like cute and fun and playful. So like obviously she'd rather hang out with her. But she's stuck with Terran, and Terran is it really insistent that like he is really good at flying around, obviously. I think the dragons inherently are very good at it, but they're like learning how to like stay on their dragons and like move through all these different maneuvers. And Terran is doing like, he's going above and beyond. They're like learning how to do a dive, and Terran is like upside down doing a twirly swirly dive. And obviously Violet is having like a really hard time staying on. And so Terran is once again using his magic to support her, but Violet is like, no, I need to learn how to do this without your magic, because if we're actually in a battle situation, I'm going to need you to have your full magic at your disposal so you can like use it for fighting and for channeling things. So she doesn't want to get used to having Terran hold her. So she insists on having him like let her fall, and he just like continually has to catch her. And over again, she's like falling and he's catching her. And so by the end of the like hour of flying practice, she's like pretty bruised up. Later that day, she bumps into Dane, and Dane is like, hey, I'm so sorry about that kiss. That was like really not appropriate, not cool of me. Actually, it is like really frowned upon to be having a physical relationship with anyone in your chain of command. So like, I think maybe once you're a third year, or maybe once we've both graduated, we can pursue this again. But for now, I don't think we should. And Violet is a little taken aback by this. Not because she wanted to kiss him. Remember, she didn't like kissing him at all. But because like, that's a weird reason. Like the fact that the reasoning is just like purely political is kind of not her favorite. But whatever. In the end, aren't we glad that she doesn't have to kiss Dane? We are. The next day, Violet is on her archives duty, and she's chatting a little bit with one of the archivists, one of the girls in the scribe quadrant, who she was like friends with before school started. And she's actually friends with like kind of a lot of people from the scribe quadrant, because she was anticipating that's where she would end up. And while she's in there, she is like doing all of her duties, but then she also asks about that folklore book that Mira wouldn't let her bring with her, that her father used to read her when she was a kid. She's like, do you guys have a copy of this? I would just like love to like look through it again. And the girl's like, I don't recognize the title, but like I'll go look for you. And it is this folklore storybook that is called The Fables of the Baron. And it's like, again, about wyverns and venom and like good and evil and this other type of magic. And she just like remembers reading it with her father once again. She asks the girl, she goes to look for it. The girl says, we don't have anything here by that title. And she's like, weird, whatever. And she like moves on. Back at the Dragon Academy, we learn that Sawyer, one of the other people in her squad, has been able to channel his magic. He is a metallurgist, a metallurgist, someone who can move metal with his mind. And so he's finally like, or he's not finally, it's pretty quick actually. He's one of the first to display like his signet power. And we learn that they will all need to like figure out what their signet power is and be able to manifest it like pretty soon here, because otherwise the power will build up inside of them and explode. The tattoos that they got act as kind of like conduits to connect them to their dragon's magic, and the magic is flowing even if they aren't utilizing it yet. So again, like they have to use it or it will explode. Later that day, she's flying around with Terran. They're like chatting. She's like, oh, I really miss Adarna. Can't she come out like tomorrow maybe and come flying with us? And he's like, no, like she can't fly with you. And so just like exposing her in that way would kind of like highlight her weakness. It's like not a good idea. So no, she's not going to just be out randomly. And then Terran is also teasing her because he's like talking about Xaden, and she's like, Xaden really annoys me. And he's like, is that what you call it when your heart is racing like that every time you see him? I love that Terran really teases her about this crush. He's like, girl, I'm onto you. As they're landing, Dane is like waiting for Violet, and Terran does not like Dane. This is why Terran's my favorite character, because Terran and I are on the same page about Dane. And Terran says to Violet, he says, tell Dane, I say, that if he hurts you, I will scorch the earth where he stands. And Violet says like something similar. She's like, if you hurt me, he says he's gonna like blow fire on you. And Taryn's like, no, repeat exactly what I said to him. And so she does. And Dane is like, I would literally never hurt you. And Violet is like, yeah, for sure, I know. And then they like walk away. They're like back inside the Dragon Academy. It is minutes later. And as soon as they're like kind of like back inside the Dragon Academy, away from the dragons, you know what Dane does? He like grabs her. It says yanks her arm. Yanking. It's not very nice. And is like, why didn't you tell me that you keep falling off of your dragon's back? He's yelling at her. He's yanking her arms. I'm about to go get Taryn from the yard and bring him in here, and he's going to scorch the earth where you are. And then I'm going to have a better book because you're not going to be in it. My nemesis, Dane. Violet is like, why would I tell you? Like, what are you going to do about it? Also, everyone's been talking about it. Like, if you paid any attention, you would know that, yeah, I'm falling off like kind of a lot, but I'm getting better. And Dane is like, oh my gosh, this is so dangerous. You're going to die. He's just like so annoying. Like, I really just like wish he was gone. Ugh. Every time he's on page, I'm like, ew, get away from me. We also see, I'm not sure if this was the same day or a couple days later, we see this kid named Jeremiah. Jeremiah like he's like running around like yelling and like talking like kind of nonsense. It becomes clear very quickly that his signet has finally kind of like manifested, and it's mind reading, and he's overwhelmed by being able to read the thoughts of everyone around him. He starts by reading Dane's thoughts, and it's very clear that Dane is like thinking about Violet. Oh, so it must be like right after this actually. Dane is thinking about Violet and like keeping her safe, and then Xaden comes up to Violet and is like, hey, if you have any secrets, you better start thinking about facts that are unrelated to them. Keep your mind safe. And then one of the professors, Professor Carr, who works with the students in their magic, comes out, and he or she, I can't remember the gender of Professor Carr. They. We will give them they pronouns. Comes out and breaks Jeremiah's neck. Because mind reading is like essentially a death sentence of a signet. It is just too dangerous for them to have in the military, because you would have access to literally any information that you wanted, and it's just like too dangerous to have around. And so if you manifest that signet, like they immediately kill you. That night, Violet is in bed. She's sleeping soundly. She's having a dream about being with her father in the archives, when suddenly like Taryn's voice breaks into her dream and is like, wake up right now, wake up, or you are going to die. And as she comes to, she opens her eyes. She's in her room, and there are 7 people in her room. 4 of them are unbonded men, and 3 of them are women, 2 of whom are unbonded, and a third who we'll talk about later. And they are like clearly like discussing how to kill her. The third woman like runs away, and again, we'll talk about her in a minute, but leaving 6 people alone with Violet in this room that are their like plot is clearly to kill her. And one of them like tries to stab her with a sword in the like ribs, but luckily Violet is wearing the armor her sister got her, and so they're unable to like puncture through that. So she like is able to kind of like pull herself out of bed. She starts like trying to hit them with her daggers. Taryn is talking to her in her mind, being like, okay, don't let them trap you by the wall, like try to hold them off, like he's coming as fast as he can. And Violet is like, hey, who the heck are you talking about, to Taryn in her mind. She like cannot figure out like how to get her way out of this, can't figure out how to get herself to the door. She like sleeps with 2 daggers under her pillow, but she can't get to the rest of her weapons because they're like between her and the weapons. Suddenly her bedroom door blows open, but it's like too late. There is already Auden, I think I've pronounced it both ways, is like at her neck with a knife, is about to like slice her neck open. It's too late. The person at the door isn't going to be able to save her. Auden says, your dragon is mine. But then she hears Adarna's voice in her head, and Adarna says, mine, and everything in the room goes still. Everything is frozen in time. And Violet's like, what's going on? And Adarna's like, could you move? I cannot actually hold this for very long. And Violet is just able to move essentially like over next to Xaden by the door, but it's enough for her to not die, because now there's not someone at her throat with a knife. And then everything comes back into motion, and Xaden is like, hi, I'm actually going to kill all 6 of you. What the heck are you doing? This is against the dragon rules. Like, there's only a couple rules about, like, murdering people. Like, really, it is free. You can murder whoever you want, whenever you want, except while they're sleeping or, like, while you're in class. So he does. He, like, kills all 6 of the people that are still in that room, and then he calls in 2 of his friends, Garrick and Bodhi, and they come help clean up. And then Xaden brings her back into his room. He helps her like get cleaned up and like binds her injuries and checks on her ribs and is like, do you think they're broken? And she's like, I'm pretty sure they're just bruised. He checks it. It's like a very like, not like spicy as in anything actually happens, but like Things kind of get hot and heavy as she's like, has to like halfway take off her nightgown so he can like assess her ribs, and he like undoes her corset, and he's like makes quick work of her corset, and then he like is putting shoes on her, and I was like, whoop. And so is Violet. Violet is very, very attracted to this man, which honestly, who can blame her? Xaden takes her through these like secret tunnel hallways through a secret doorway because Taryn really wants to like check on Violet and like make sure she's doing okay. And so they go out there, and Xaden immediately is like yelling at Taryn, and Violet is like, whoa, that's kind of crazy that he is like fighting with this giant black dragon, also trying to like conversing with him. And so Violet like goes to like translate because Xaden is like, what kind of powers were you channeling through her? And Taryn says, that's none of your business. And Violet goes to like translate that for Xaden because normally you can't like talk to dragons that are not your own. And Xaden says, I can hear him. And that's when we learn that, again, because of their dragons connections, Xaden and Violet are also connected. And so Xaden can talk to Taryn and Violet can talk to Sigale because Sigale and Taryn's minds are also like linked in this very like particular way because they are a bonded pair. And so like all four of them can talk together. And so they're kind of like talking about what happened, what's going on. And we learn that Adarna, a feathertail, this feathertail dragon is not like a specific type of dragon, but rather like a baby dragon. Adarna is just like a baby dragon. She's only 2 years old. And Xaden turns to Sigale and is like, oh my gosh, you had a kid and you didn't even tell me? And Sigale is like, ew, she's not my kid. I would literally never let my kid come to threshing. And we learn that Adarna is an orphan. Her parents died before she was hatched. So sad. And like everyone kind of takes care of her at the Vale, but she was like really insistent that she come to threshing. No one thought she would actually bond a dragon or no one thought she was going to bond a rider because that's like against the rules. Like the babies are not supposed to bond with anyone because it is like very volatile. But like she did. Anyway, that's one of the reasons that they're like so protective of her and why they took like particular offense. I mean, I think they would have been offended if any humans were trying to kill dragons, but like they took like particularly a strong offense at Jack and Auden's attempts at trying to like hurt this little baby. Anyway, we also learned that's why the time was able to stop. So babies don't like produce signets in the same way as adult dragons. So adult dragons and riders create signets, which is just like a combination of their like shared chemistry that like, I don't know, channels into a specific type of magic. But baby dragons can't do that, but they can like directly share their gift with people that they have bonded with. And so that's what Adarna did. She directly shared this gift of time stopping with Violet, but it's a very dangerous thing to do because essentially if the rider uses too much of that magic, it can actually kill the babies. They like don't have as much control over their magic, and so they can overextend themselves through their riders like very easily, and it's like pretty dangerous and like a volatile situation. And Sigale is like, so the thing is, you cannot tell anyone that Adarna is a baby. This is like top secret information. We like are really worried as dragons that if they were to find out that like that's what a feathertail is, that they would try to like come into the Vale and kind of like do things they shouldn't with the babies, like maybe steal the baby dragons and like try to raise them or something. I don't know. We're not giving specifics, but like, she doesn't trust the peoples. Who would? And so she's like, we're going to try to keep it calm. We're going to try to keep the fact that Adarna is a baby under wraps. We know eventually like she'll grow up and everyone will notice that, oh, you were a baby and now you're an adult, but hopefully that'll be in a few years. And the elders are already working on a plan to like better secure the Vale so we can make sure that like no one gets any ideas. And Violet is like, of course we won't say anything. Also, I'm really worried that if people found out my signet is pausing time, they would decide that it was too dangerous of a signet, just like the mind reading was too dangerous of a signet, and they would murder me. So I'm like happy to keep this a secret for now. And everyone was like, perf, that's the plan then. Secrets, only the five of us, Adarna, Taryn, Sigale, Xaden, and Violet will know that she can pause time with Adarna's help. Everyone else will be kept out of the loop for now. Okay, that's where we're going to end. We're about halfway through. This is where we're going to end the first half of this video. I'm sure it's already like too long, probably like 2 hours. And we still have a whole second half. I'm so glad we finally got into the dragons. They truly are my favorite part of this book series. They really make even the moments with Dane worth it. Also, we get to the like more fun stuff with Xaden too. This is where the book I feel like it's really good. The beginning isn't like terrible, but it's like really just set up for the back half of the book. So excited to get into that with you. Subscribe if you aren't already. We would love to have you along for this Fourthwing journey, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.